hello everyone. I'm going to create uh, kind of a quick and dirty tutorial on how to create open paths and closed paths in After Effects for text in particular. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go to create a new background layer solid. So new layer and solid. And I'm just going to go ahead and title that background and give this background color. And you could use your composition default background color, but I always like to see, no matter what my background is, I always like to see the background as sort of like a tangible thing in the timeline. So I have this layer, it's called background, and as I've done in the past, I'm going to go ahead and change the color swatch to blue since the background is blue as well. I realized I misspelled background there, so I'm going to go ahead and press return and retitle that. As I said, this is a kind of a quick and dirty tutorial, no stopping, no editing, that kind of thing. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and lay some text up here. And here's my text tool at the top left of my After Effects interface. And I'm not worried about color or font or anything like that quite yet, but I'm just going to type something uh, on the composition. All right, so there's my text, kind of this default white. I can highlight it. You can see over here in my character or text panel, um, I have sort of the default Helvetica. I can change that if I want. Um, Try something a little bit more exotic here. Maybe blow this up by increasing the font size. And finally, I can change the color, right? And if I want to, I can additionally add a stroke color. Right now, you can see that there is no stroke indicated by the white box with a red slash through it. I'm going to I'll go with the default black stroke, and I'm going to make it, I think, 1 pixel. Um, you kind of got to you got to watch out for stroke sizes that are really tiny because when you watch them on different monitors, they might not quite register. There might be some weird, like little glitchy feedback things, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that at the default 1 pixel. Okay, so there are two types of paths that we're going to talk about today, and one is an open path and one is a closed path. Before we get started with that, I'm going to go down to my timeline really quickly, and I'm going to change this to yellow so that it matches the text. Again, this is just, for me, this is like a nice navigational strategy. It makes things orderly and clean and just easier for me to see. All right, so with the text layer selected, and it's really important that it is selected, right, in order to create the motion path. I'm going to go up to my pen tool, and I'm just going to, and maybe I'll shrink the size of this a little bit so that I can see outside of my composition window a little bit more. But yeah, so I have my text layer selected. Again, really important that that is the case. And I'm just going to create this nice Bezier path. Okay. And when I open up that layer, I now see text, mask, and transform. And I'm going to click on the text disclosure arrow and then the path disclosure arrow. Now, right now, if I look at path options, it says path none, right? But if I change that to, it corresponds with this Bezier curve that I created. Now, I can get more particular about the name of the mask and the color of the mask and this kind of thing by dialing into the masks um, disclosure arrow. And I can actually retitle if I want to. Um, I can call mask one open mask path. And I could even dial into the color swatch here and change that to yellow as well. Again, this is all purely optional. It's just kind of gives me a better sense of order. So for path options under the text, I go ahead and choose this open mask path. And what you see happen right away is that the text snaps to the line. It snaps to that mask line. Okay, so if I play this back, I press the space bar, nothing happens, right? So we've actually got to animate the text, right? We've got it along the path. Now we have to animate it. So I'll go ahead into my path options and it says reverse pass, perpendicular, force alignment, et cetera, right? And for now, I'm just going to play around with this first margin um, parameter. And so I click the stopwatch for the first margin. And as I do with any of the other values for other parameters, I can click and drag to scrub and move that text, kind of center it or get it more in frame, right? So I'm at the first kind of the 0 point there, and then I go to the end of my timeline, right? And then I'm just going to scrub those values a little bit more, right? So there are two keyframes. I created one at the beginning, then there's one at the end at 7 seconds here. And then when I space bar to play that back, there is my open mask path. Now, why is it called an open mask path? Because um, there is kind of a point A and a point B. It does not close back in on itself. So the next thing we're going to do is to create a closed path. And so I'll go ahead and click the visibility icon just so we can hide that for a minute. All right, so creating an open mask path. All right, once again, I'm going to go ahead and make sure my text tool is selected, and I will once again type something in. I'll go ahead just for the sake of brevity and leave the font and color and all that the same. I'll keep it nice and short. Okay, so once again, I want to make sure that my text layer, open the pod bay doors, is selected. Um, because I need to tie the mask to the layer. And the way to do that is to have that layer selected when I create the mask. So this time we're doing a closed mask, and I'm going to do a perfectly circular mask. So shift click and drag. And I might center that mask a little bit more in the frame. All right, and you'll notice in this case that the mask actually cuts off the beginning of the text, and that's not a problem. We're going to deal with that in just a second. Um, so right now it's actually acting like a mask would, like it's sort of getting rid of stuff on the outside and including only stuff on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and label that mask. We'll call this closed mask. And just like I did last time with my text, um, disclosure arrow open, and then path options, disclosure open, I'm going to go ahead and select the close mask option. And there you can see once again, it has snapped that text to the path. And this is where I kind of play around with increasing or decreasing the size of the font. Right. And you can get in here and play with some other parameters, but again, just for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep things kind of simple. All right. So just like we did before, click on the first margin, keyframe, and then bring my playhead to the end of the timeline and scrub this the other way. All right, and we'll play that back. And I kind of have those backwards actually, right? So not a problem. I can actually click and drag my end keyframe to the beginning and the beginning keyframe to the end. And let's see how that goes. Right. So now it's, for me at least, seems to be playing in more of a forward motion. Now there is this other issue, right? You'll notice if you want to have like this text on a loop, right? You'll notice that when it gets to the end, it kind of jumps. And one thing that I do, if I want that to be sort of a continuous, seamless motion, is I go up to the View drop-down menu and I choose Rulers. And the rulers allow you to create guides, right? So you should see your rulers now to your left and at the top. And what I'm going to do with my playhead at the beginning, so kind of the starting position here, is I'm going to click and drag on the ruler, and it's, as you can see, dragging a guide out. And I'm just going to drag that guide right to the right of open. And that's going to help me know, right, where that. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to now, once again, line that perfectly up. Um, Now, the other thing I'm going to do, because if I play this back the way it is now, there's going to be like a little pause. It's better. Oh, maybe not. That's actually pretty good. But if the text were moving faster, you might see a little pause at the end of the timeline. I mean, I think I can now. It's really subtle. But the way I take care of that is I actually just move that in keyframe one frame past the end of the timeline. I might need to zoom in so that I can see that. So yeah, I'm just moving that keyframe right beyond the end of the timeline. And now that text is should be doing a perfect 360 loop. Um, and you might be like, well, why don't you just, just like if you were changing your rotation parameter, why don't you just type in 360? Well, it's a little different when you're dealing with text and first margin. The numbers are a little wonky and depend on the size of your circle and, other things like that, probably the size of your font. All right, so that is creating an open mask path and a closed mask path.